Welcome to the Education of a Financial Planner, where we look at the major concepts in financial planning through the lens of two quant investors who are learning the ropes of the planning process and how to help clients achieve their long-term goals. Learn along with us as experienced financial planner Matt Ziegler helps us understand the most important financial planning concepts that impact all of us and how we can apply them to achieve the best outcomes in our financial lives. In each episode, we will work through one major financial planning concept from the ground up and learn how we can apply it in the real world. From retirement to college savings to taxes to estate planning, we will cover a wide range of topics that apply to each of our everyday lives. We hope you will join us in our learning journey.
Justin Carbonneau and Jack Forehand are principals at Validea Capital Management. Matt Ziegler is managing director at Sunpoint Investments. The opinions expressed in this podcast do not necessarily reflect the opinions of Validea Capital or Sunpoint Investments. No information on this podcast should be construed as investment advice. Securities discussed in the podcast may be holdings of clients of Validea Capital or Sunpoint Investments.
All right, guys. Today, we're going to have a discussion around ChatGPT and what it may mean for maybe not only society, but more specifically investment firms like ours and also people that do financial planning, like what Matt does at Sunpoint. And so, this is, I think, if you're listening to this and you haven't played with ChatGPT, I personally highly encourage you do. And I'll sort of talk about all the different ways that I've been using the technology in a few minutes. But, we're really sort of this is going to be sort of a ranging discussion because none of us are experts in this. This is a new technology that is, really only been out in the market for maybe, 7 or 8 months at this point. And obviously there's a lot of hype in the market with things like NVIDIA and the companies that are supplying sort of the picks and the shovels to the artificial intelligence landscape. There's an investment opportunity there, potentially. But our discussion today is going to be more around sort of how to think about the use of this new technology and more specifically related to investments and financial planning. I don't know if I summarized that, Jack and Matt, correctly, but that's where I think we're going to go today.
No, that was really good. And, I think a good starting point is what you just referenced, which is you've used this more than Matt and I have. And so at a high level, it'd be good if you can kind of talk about, in terms of our practice, in terms of what we do with clients, like where have you found this most useful? Okay,
so I think you can break it down. This is kind of what I've thought of so far. You can break down the use of it into different categories. I'm kind of stealing like a Matt listing thing here, but you can think about it in terms of content creation. You can think about it in terms of knowledge building. You can think about it in terms of search, and then you can think about it in terms of creativity. So let me try to outline different examples in each one of those. So for content, any blog post, article, email, summary, I think ChatGPT can significantly help in productivity. Let me give you an example. I'm giving a presentation in a few weeks. I kind of summarized what I wanted that presentation to be around. I asked ChatGPT for 10 different titles, which it gave me. I kind of maybe took parts of different ones. I then basically said, if you were building, I want to give a 25 slide presentation around this topic, create me an outline for that presentation. ChatGPT did that very well. I then basically built, and it's not building the presentation, but it's building basically the wireframe for it. I took that and in roughly 45 minutes, I was able to, and I have images and stuff that I need to pull in, but I basically built a presentation that would have normally taken me, I think, a few hours to do. I did it in less than an hour. So it's a huge productivity hack. Another sort of example, a lot of these sort of spill over into different areas, but I'm just giving you examples, sort of what I think are more unique examples of how I use it. Like my mom, who lives in Vermont, is doing, I forget the name of it. It's some type of deed on her house where her house, when she passes away, can get passed to us rather than go through probate. And Vermont has a template on their website. She went to a lawyer and the lawyer was going to charge her $500 to do it, which my mom doesn't, that's a lot of money for my mom. So I said, let me take a look at it. So I went to the Vermont website, I got the template, but it's only a template. There's like unique things you got to put in there. So basically I took the template from the state of Vermont. I then put like my mom's address and where she lives and the property address, and then my brother's in there and the type of tenancy that she wanted to have. And then basically I used ChatGPT to create what is the deed that will now, it was notarized and now is on record with the town clerk. So again, that's something that would have cost my mom $500, but I probably could have done it without ChatGPT, but it was way more efficient using ChatGPT. So those are all different examples of content sort of productivity. You would then have the knowledge, which is, and I'm going to include coding in this, but it can correct code, it can actually code. I kind of think a unique example that I was using it for is my daughter is in honors math algebra, and she's doing quadratic linear equations. So, and it's quite complex stuff for me, and I'm not really that good at math. But basically, I was able to take her questions and put those into ChatGPT, and then have ChatGPT sort of walk me through how you would tackle this quadratic linear equation and in a step by step. And I was able to give that to her to sort of help in her learning of the concept. So that's a kind of a cool thing in the knowledge sort of building area. I don't think it should be used as, one of the, I guess, risks or concerns I have with students is, they're going to start using this and just sort of cut the actual learning out, and it's going to be writing essays for people. But there are techniques to try to, uncover when AI has been used to generate stuff in education. But that's sort of the example of knowledge. Going to search, Google is still my main search, and ChatGPT only goes up to September 2021. But I mean, I kind of feel like with search, when you type a search in, you're presented with a list of options to choose from, and then you've got to dive in further into each page and kind of find. Google's doing a good job pulling content out and highlighting content, but ChatGPT, I think, can be a more efficient search engine for me, at least. But the other side with that is you're not getting. Maybe people like the options or would rather pick and choose from what source, and you don't know the source that ChatGPT is necessarily pulling from. So there's a risk of the response having some type of error in it, I guess. And then on the creativity side of things, I can think of two examples. Again, my daughter they were trying to plan like a year-end soccer thing. And so I asked it to, like for 14-year-old girls, like what would be some good year-end soccer season celebrations? And, whatever, I got back a list of like 10 things that I thought were pretty good ideas. I'm sure that exists in some website post somewhere, but, ChatGPT helped me get that. And then the other thing I did is I don't know what popped in. This is the kind of stuff I'm thinking about, like when I'm using it, like, I heard the Eagles song Seven Bridges Road, which I really like. It's like one of my favorite Eagles songs when I hear it, like the harmonies in there and stuff. I don't know if you guys know that song or not, but I was just like, I had this idea of creating like a coming to age movie using Seven Bridges Road as like the concept, and then writing a script around like this movie. And it's kind of crazy. Like, and I asked it to be like set in like the South, and it'd be a group of friends, and there'd be like a romantic twist, and there'd be a protagonist and stuff like that. And like wrote this whole like movie script. I think I'm going to Hollywood with this thing or something. So Matt, I thought you'd like that one.
I did. It sounds like Vermont Boys in the Hood set to the Eagles. This is great.
So yeah, I don't know what you guys, I know you haven't used it that much, but that's kind of the main. I know I'm missing tons of stuff, but I'm just thinking of how, I've been using it in my everyday life.
Did you guys read, or do you remember that book, The Long Tail by Chris Anderson?
I haven't read it.
I keep thinking of this book, and this was like a book about the internet, but you're making me think of it in everything you just said with this, Justin, because it's like, one of the big ideas going on memory here from The Long Tail is basically the internet creates an infinite shelf space. So the whole idea is like, if you have a library, you can only have good books on the shelves in the library that set up like the ethos for the library you're trying to have to curate for these people. What the internet comes in and says, you're no longer confined by the amount of slots on each shelf that you have. And it's the same for if you're selling something like at the general store versus buying it online in Amazon, or if it's the music library and you're streaming off iTunes or Spotify or whatever. And so the idea is like the internet opened up infinite shelf space for us to store and access stuff. And something could be a hit, like way down the end of the line. The local library might not have some super weird, obscure book, but the internet can have that. And without the marginal cost of storage, etc., there's a real benefit. And so everything you just said about using ChatGPT, and when I think about narrow intelligence versus general, it's like in those categories of content creation, knowledge, search and creativity, those all become really useful things to create and store on some shelf and then access later or rearrange later in some creative and novel way, that it was hard to just interact with that infinite shelf space before. And this is like, it's turbocharging our ability to both build, use, and access that space in each of our lives, as opposed to just the benefits of going to Amazon to get another package.
I was just going to say, one of the things on that, Matt, is when you're in ChatGPT, you actually have your prompts, but all your prompts are saved. So you have your historical prompt list over on the left hand side of the page, and then you have the actual, like, most of the page is what gives you the responses. But to your point about, like, sort of like the infinite shelf life, like all of those prompts, both for you individually and collectively in ChatGPT, is sort of like being saved as well.
What do you think when you think about the financial planning business and you think about like sort of the long-term impact of that? What do you think the impact's going to be? And obviously, I'll give you some bonus points if you can cite 3 Guns N' Roses songs, including Paradise City, in your response.
So, man, my brain wants to try to do that right now, and we could work through both appetite for destructions and all the things involved. But I'm gonna resist. But I am gonna say it's kind of like, have you seen that commercial? Maybe we've already even talked about this, where like Slash shows up at like the high school band audition or whatever.
I love
Have you
that
seen this commercial?
I love that commercial. It's for some insurance company, I think.
For an insurance company. And the idea is, it's like, here's these regular schmucks playing their instruments. There's the Derek Jeter like baseball one too, where it's like, you basically is bringing the gun to the knife fight, like everybody's set up to do something. But then this literal all-star, this little rock star shows up and just like doesn't even like tip the scale, like breaks the scale. And so I look at this stuff for financial planning and everything else in terms of, Justin, what you said about like the Vermont property piece. It can do a lot of remedial or narrow things. And I mean, just to find that term, because I feel like this is part of the conversation people get lost on, is, do you guys explain this when you talk to people about this? Like the whole idea of narrow intelligence versus general intelligence in how we.
Well,
think about
I don't think
these?
I don't think we've like needed to, but I think for this conversation, it's important to kind of flesh that out a little bit. So I'm glad you're going there.
Do you have a working definition that you use of these? I can spitball one, but go for it if you got it.
I mean, yeah, I was kind of thinking about that or looking at it, and basically, like, narrow intelligence is designed to perform some type of like narrow task, like the examples I gave you. And ChatGPT is kind of built for those types of things. I mean, it's giving you responses in natural human language form to the prompts. Whereas I think a general AI is sort of trying to like think like almost like a human would cognitively about a demanding task. So if I'm sort of thinking about from a financial planning perspective, then Matt, you can sort of build off of this. Like, you might be able to you might have like your risk questionnaire, which we've talked about that a lot. You might be able to have that and dump it into ChatGPT and have that sort of get to someone's real risk tolerance. But what ChatGPT doesn't know is when you get on the phone with that person and the market's down 30% and you hear fear in their voice, AI isn't going to be able. Now, maybe in the future, AI can recognize that there's fear there if AI is somehow listening in on a call or something. But, that's sort of what I'm like, those are examples of, I think, like narrow and sort of a general. Do you agree with that?
Totally agree. And I think that that's one of the things, as people get caught up in like the AI hype machine right now, it's understanding that right now we're still primarily talking about narrow intelligence, which is to basically say we can set it up to do basic tasks with like a clear endpoint. It's a prompt and an endpoint to deliver that. So in the world of financial planning, to be able to say, summarize this meeting, take this information and organize it into my forms, those types of like narrowly defined prompts with a stated outcome of what the expectation of what I want the thing to do, that's where it's promising. And that's what I'm really excited about. The idea of AI replacing a financial planner or a person in general, in most things where the task is not just narrow, that's where the people who know how to use it it's like people playing chess with the computers. It's like, if you know how to do these things together, you've got an advantage over anybody who's trying to do one without the computer or just the computer alone.
Yeah, I think there's kind of two things here. One is there's a lot of moving parts, in financial planning, and it's very hard for every aspect of someone's personal situation to be handled by something like this. I think, some of it you kind of suss out by talking to them. Like I was listening to Michael Kitz's talk about this, and he was basically saying like, all right, he was giving an example of somebody who is going to retire when they have $1 million, and having ChatGPT or whatever help them with building a plan and stuff. But then he was like, well, what if they can retire with $800,000 and they have domain specific knowledge where they could be a part-time consultant and they don't really even need the $1 million? Like there's a lot like that. I think that it would probably be very hard for like an AI thing to get to that point where it can really suss out like all the different things you can suss out talking to someone.
And the brilliance is still, like, you could go to ChatGPT right now and say, give me the 3 Guns N' Roses songs that do this. And it can do it way faster than I can in my brain in the moment. It goes back to like the infinite shelf space and the library of information access that it can pull through that. However, if we're in the moment and we're having the conversation and we're shifting back and forth between, Paul McCartney, Live and Let Die, and Axl Rose, Live and Let Die, I don't know if in the moment dynamically you need artificial general intelligence to accomplish that task. And that's where I think the dividing line is, that still says, how do we play nice? And more importantly, how do us professionals play creatively with our future robot overlords? And there's probably a good runway of time to get this experience that, Justin's lapping us all on by playing with this so much more.
The other thing I think is challenging here is the issue of trust in terms of not just in financial planning, but in a lot of areas. Like there's certain things that are very hard for a human being to trust a computer to do. Like, for instance, if you guys went to San Francisco, like tomorrow, and you got off the plane and there were 2 Ubers, there was the Uber driven by a person for $10 and there was the one driven completely by a computer, for $5. Like, which one are you taking right now?
Are you referencing, I can't remember where I saw it, but just because you brought this up, that Pew Research study?
No, I don't even know that one.
Okay, so I have this note that 37% of American adults say they definitely or probably would want to ride in a driverless car. 21% are extremely or very comfortable even sharing the road with other cars that are driverless. So it's an interesting divide. I would venture to say on this is just my personal opinion on this, is trust is earned through repeat engagements, right? It's this idea that, like, to build a relationship where we're trusting, we have to continuously show up, interact, see an outcome, and earn that trust. The hard part is, and again, back to narrow intelligence, it's not hard to earn trust in filing a legal document, or maybe if if the subway system is run by AI, I could probably understand a scenario where one train, one track, and what the ultimate kill switch is to make sure 2 trains don't hit each other. That probably feels totally justifiable in my mind. But if you have a mix of driverless cars and human-driven cars and everything else on a road, that's where it starts to feel like the room for error is there, and that's where trust potentially breaks down. So I think as we look at these repeat interactions and how we build trust over time, we're a long way from that movie Her and Cylons.
So I have your the Guns N' Roses metaphors if you want them real quick.
Oh, please.
You ready?
I would love them.
Okay. Welcome to the jungle. This song can metaphorically represent and sometimes chaotic and uncertain world of finance and technology. As the lyrics say, if you've got the money, honey, we've got your disease. This could symbolize the allure of potential pitfalls in financial planning and asset management, especially with the introduction of AI. Number 2, patience, which is a great one. Financial planning and asset management require a lot of patience. One has to wait for the right time to invest and also wait for investments to produce yield. Similarly, the development and adoption of AI in these fields also requires patience. It takes time to build, test, and trust new technology. And the last one is November Rain, which this song is known for its melodic tone, could metaphorically relate to the caution and skepticism expressed by handing over financial planning completely to AI. Just as the lyrics talk about the inevitability of November Rain, changes and challenges the financial world are inevitable, and the role of AI in managing these changes is a significant consideration. So
I'm about to take
great.
my guitar and go out to the desert and just stand
I
outside of a small
these
chapel.
examples. That was
I got
good.
nothing else to do with my life now.
I know I got you some like the little. I know the music tones were like going in your head with like a little patience in November rain. I'm gonna listen to these later.
It's
Forgot
a
about
jam,
these.
man. Yeah, get
We got
down.
some really good feedback from last time you sang on the podcast, Justin. So
Oh,
we should get that going again.
oh boy.
Yeah, the other thing I wanted to ask you about is like, and I think this is another issue, is this idea of edge cases. So going back to like the driverless car thing, the reason I probably would not get in the driverless car is like there's so many variables when a car is driving. You think about like the one thing that goes wrong that's not in the code, and like if that you could be dead if that's the case. So because of the stakes, and you the 1.0001% thing, you're still really worried about it. And I would think in terms of using this in planning, it would be the same thing to some degree. Like if this thing, let's say eventually this thing could do and everything you need on the financial planning side, but what if it sets up the wrong kind of trust or something, or what if it issues the wrong trade? That 0.001 thing can blow everything up. One little mistake can blow everything up, and so I think that's going to be something these things are going to have to overcome eventually if they're going to be if it's actually going to challenge like financial planning. It's not only it's going to have to not make those mistakes, but it's going to have to earn someone's trust. Because one of the things we talked about, we did a podcast with the guys from Deepwater on technology investing, and one of the things we talked about is the standard people have for a driverless car is way higher than they have for a person driving a car. Like these things probably already are going to kill a lot less people, have a lot less accidents, but the standard is going to be 1,000 times higher for a computer doing it. It's going to be if a computer does something wrong, it's going to be in the news everywhere, whereas people do it every single day. And that's probably the same thing here. Like the standard for a computer is going to have to be ultra high for it to actually start taking on like financial planning, I would think.
I completely agree with that statement. And I think when the conversation shifts to when people are online and pontificating about how this is going to take everybody's job and whatever else, you can't overlook that. The cultural standards, and this is why like cultural reinforcement and trust and all these things are so important in this conversation, is because we're actually now shifting to going, the advent of the car may have gotten rid of the need for like horse-drawn carriages and buggies, right? But like the role of the chauffeur didn't go away. Like there was still, the chauffeur is going to put you on the carriage or is going to put you in the car and whatever. It's just that the technology at the disposal of the person in the seat helping to like manifest this thing is what happens. If I invite you guys over for dinner and there's a, one day of the week I'm actually accidentally going to serve you poison, like that's not good for trust building because of like these cases. And so when we think about like, how do we build trust? How do we culturally reinforce some idea or norm? That standard is rightfully, to a degree, like outlandishly high for turning the keys over to Skynet.
And we also know in our business, like behavior is everything, and trust drives behavior. So if one of our clients is struggling in one of our value models and they can call Justin and they trust Justin, that's going to potentially prevent them from making a mistake. And I don't know, like if we get into like a fully automated solution, and I guess robo-advisors have kind of dealt with the same problem. Like if you get into a fully automated solution, like who's going to tell you not to make that mistake? And like, typing into ChatGPT, I'm about to panic and sell my portfolio is very different than like calling up Justin and talking about the fact that you're about to panic and sell your portfolio.
Completely agree. And I think this is the hard nuanced reality that narrow intelligence isn't yet capable of dealing with in a way that I think most humans from a trust standpoint are going to find satisfactory. At least people who aren't digital natives. It's also entirely possible that people's willingness to interact with narrow intelligence, if you're 4 years old today, your experience with your smartphone and with the advent of these technologies in your life is going to be very different than somebody who's 40 years old today in how these things get adopted and brought into comfort.
Just before we wrap up the planning part, because I want to talk about how it might impact asset management as well. I was just thinking, like, so in terms of like inclusion, it would seem to me, like at least for right now, this is something that could make a good planner better. We've talked about that with analysts on like our side of things, but like it seems like it can free up some of your time for things that you otherwise would be like mundane tasks, and it can make you better in terms of like how many clients you could deal with. Like I know, like whenever we've talked to, we've had like different acquisition talks in the past and stuff, and a lot of financial planning firms sort of have a number in terms of here's the number of clients like a planner can deal with before they're beyond capacity. They have like some number they work off of. And it seems like this might expand that number. You might have a good planner like yourself might be able to work with more clients because you can take some of that mundane stuff off your table. I mean, does that make sense?
Yeah, it's leverage. It's back to the idea of the chauffeur of the horse-drawn carriage shifting to becoming the chauffeur of the car. Like not having to like care for the horses in the stables and whatever else and just putting like gas in it and changing the oil. That's that's a huge piece of time saving and totally changes the marketplace for the service being offered. And I think what this is going to do, the advent of accessible narrow intelligence and the ability to do these things, is it gives a whole new toolbox and a whole new efficiency to being able to say, let's unlock the potential of that infinite shelf space in a way that I hesitate to say, will it allow people to do more things for more clients? It may not give me the same amount of one-to-one scale. I think it'll give me a different amount of like one-to-many scale with a lot of people in my situation or in more on the planning side of the business, definitely on the asset management side of the business. But I think that's what makes this interesting here. There's a Tyler Cowen quote about this, not specifically about this, but I also another older book that I think of all the time right now is Average is Over, by Tyler Cowen. In Average is Over, I'm pretty sure he says that humans prefer drama to perfection, and I think this also speaks to like my relationship with clients' relationship with us and their firms is basically saying not drama triangle. Like we're not talking about passive aggressive behavior drama. What we're talking about is people want like a little bit of something that's loose and not perfectly rigid. And that's still the thing. So if I can be a little bit like looser, not too rigid, but still have access to all the data and all the things that are going to help make better decisions and drive better conversations and make me remember that you said you wanted that vacation to, Honolulu in 2027. Yeah, that makes us better at our job just because we have this super tool in the toolbox.
Yeah, one of the things I've been thinking a lot about, and I want to get your guys' thoughts, is if we shift to the asset management business, like what the impact will be there. I mean, you've got people like us. I mean, first of all, you've got active managers. You've got people picking stocks to try to outperform the market, and we know the track record on that is not too great. Then you've got people like us, like using factors or using like quantitative methods to try to produce excess returns over the market. And like if I think about that world where it is today, and I think about this is not really ChatGPT as much as it's AI in general, but like how does that change that world? I have my own thoughts, but I want to ask you guys first. Like, I mean, how do you think about that going forward? Like, what might change because of this technology being there in terms of people who are trying to outperform the market?
So one of the things that I have seen, and this exists, is there's technology built on ChatGPT that you can now basically through language, through text, outline an investment strategy that you want. So I want a concentrated value strategy that, is mostly large cap and, whatever has a, above market dividend yield. You can prompt that. And then what this technology will do is it'll develop an investment strategy, back test it on the fly, give you the list of stocks and ETFs that will build this strategy. And then this company has gone so far as if you want to actually have them manage the strategy for you, they will do that. There's like a subscription-based business piece of the business, and then I think there's like an asset management fee. So it's this ability to like just outline your strategy in natural, text and language, and then what kind of amazed me with that is I don't know how they're back testing on the fly, but they seem to be doing that. I don't know how far back they're going. But that's just one example that I see that I'm like, because we run a lot of quantitative strategy. So, and ours are, very rigid, like they're coded on the back end in our system. We don't allow people to change those variables or define their strategies. They can mix and match strategies together, but that's kind of how we do it, So that's one thing that I see out there currently.
Yeah, and I have two reactions to that. One is it's really, really cool. Like the idea that you can like type in a strategy and then have it back tested on the fly as to what you want is very, very cool. I think it's less good practically. And the reason is because if you think about me, like I'm building our quantitative strategies. Like I have to be very careful about how I do that. If someone says to me, I want a large cap strategy and I want these factors in there, I can test that strategy. I can do something that I think makes sense. But then I also can say after I've gotten the results, those just aren't good enough. Like let's start tweaking the model. Let's come up with something a little bit better. And I can quickly data mine my way into something that's better than what I initially came up with. But what I initially came up with is probably going to work better. And so there's I think going to be the temptation for people to type it in. All right, well, that was good that you gave me that strategy, but I really want something a little bit better than that. Like, give me better performance, give me a better Sharpe ratio. And like this thing
Right.
can probably just keep spitting it back to you over and over again with like really good results. But again, just like our strategies are only as good as me and my ability to build them. Whoever's typing in that thing, those strategies are only going to be as good as whoever that person is. And if that's someone who hasn't studied market history and hasn't looked at the long term and stuff, that could be a little bit dangerous as well, because I think the end resulting strategy might not be one that works.
I think there's pieces of this too where it's ways this will help first are in stuff like doing the back test. Ways this will help first will be able to say like, okay, did I just data mine myself into a hole? Like, talk me out of this. To take the counter example of what you're doing, to do the administrative tasks. There's companies that we're seeing for our family office clients that can go out and gather via scrapes and other things, like all the data from the private investments and other place, and condense it into a spreadsheet or into one central location. Those are all the things that are probably like, I don't want to say the low hanging fruit, but the obvious places that will make the process of asset management and the delivery of asset management just hopefully way faster and way more efficient, and probably more profitable for the companies who offer it, who adapt to this stuff. The other side of that is, and this is where I think getting into the terms matters again, companies that are doing machine, like there's hedge funds and there's open-end mutual funds. I'm thinking of like Catalyst Milburn and some of those guys. They do machine learning. Mm-hmm. This isn't a brand new thing. There's people who have been running strategies with this stuff for a while, and it is really interesting to see. None of it's perfect, just like anything in markets. And who knows what the mix is? We've been talking for decades about active and passive, and how much of the market could become passive before like active management does or doesn't matter and all that stuff. Okay, how much of the market, if it was machine learning driven, like would distort things?
Well, one of the things that I think about with our business too is we have, like, Jack, we've talked about this idea that, applying AI to unique data sets is where maybe there's an informational edge, for a company. If you could, and it's not ChatGPT, but it's more just, machine learning or some type of neural network on, a proprietary data set. Like, I think about us, like we have, fundamental scores and rankings on securities going back to, almost 15 years at this point. So now it's a big exercise in sort of data mining, possibly or potentially, but I think you can kind of use AI and machine learning, to your point, Matt, and maybe supplement your investment process. I know Verdad, I think, is it Verdad that they do some ML stuff, but then there's a discretionary, they're picking the stocks. So it's that might be another opportunity for asset managers, I guess, and data providers.
Yeah, and I think this gets back to the idea that there's three ways you can gain an advantage. You can gain an informational advantage, you can gain an analytical advantage, you can analyze data better, or you can have a behavioral advantage. And, today, as we sit, even before any of this technology existed, if you have information other people don't have, you have a big advantage. And that advantage will probably be magnified by this technology, because if I have a data set nobody else has, I can probably, go through that data set and find things much more quickly and easily than I could before. So it sort of magnifies that informational advantage. Now, that's a really hard advantage to get, because everybody wants data when it has value. So even when you looked at things like satellite photos of Walmart parking lots and stuff that hedge funds were using, I mean, that quickly became used by everybody. And so the value is not there anymore. So I think it magnifies an informational advantage. The analytical advantage, I mean, in the world we live in the factor investing world, I mean, people have beat this crap to death for many, many years. So I think it's going to be very, very hard to find something like in the standard fundamentals of companies that's going to hasn't been found already. I mean, we've been torturing that data for many, many years. But I think it also comes back to, I think Jim O'Shaughnessy usually talks about this, like the idea that the behavioral advantage is really the one that still exists for your average person. Like, and this doesn't really impact that much. There's no more, behavior is not going to be changed really by any of this technology. So I don't think, like, when you look in the world of those advantages, I don't think the world of the stock market has changed that much because of this technology. I mean, I think on a lot of short-term trading things, there's probably opportunities for people in crypto. But if you look at like long-term factor investing like us, I mean, there's not more alpha that's suddenly going to be available in the market than there was the day before this stuff came out. Now, we may get into a situation where instead of me, you, and Justin competing for the alpha, it's a bunch of AI bots competing for the alpha. But at the end of the day, the net result is still there. And the other thing is, going back to the behavioral thing, whoever the end user of that strategy is has to be able to stick through the periods where it doesn't work, because these things are not going to find strategies that work, unless they're Renaissance technologies or something. They're not going to find strategies for your everyday investor that just work all the time and never don't work. I mean, those will get arbed away eventually. So to me, that's kind of my overall take on it.
Behavior in the overlay execution. Like that's where
right.
this comes down to. Not to the day trading or the in and outs or whatever else. Maybe there's some marginal things that market makers and other people can do there. But, and this gets back to the whole general intelligence aspect of it. This is where human plus technology helping you navigate these decisions, stick to the strategy that you said you want to stick to, or that is the easiest for you to stick to and gets you most of the way there just on its own without having to change something crazy. That's the superpower. And these things are starting to give us new super tools in this box.
The other thing I would say is, I guess a lot of what we've talked about is, this may not change. It'll change a lot in terms of the way we operate, but it may not change a lot about like sort of the rules of markets and the way markets operate and, financial planning and the need for a financial planner. But the other thing we should say is like, we all tend to underestimate these technologies. That's just the way it works. Like if you go back to the beginning of the internet and thought like, here's what you could do with the internet. What we actually did with the internet was a lot more than that. So we probably, as people like looking at it where we are today, because no one can figure out what's going to be done with this, we probably are missing things that will be like massive impacts, because this probably is an internet level innovation in terms of what it's going to be. And so we probably are not like seeing every possible thing that could happen here. And there probably will be impacts beyond what we can see right now, just looking at it with the facts we see today.
Dare to say definitely, not even probably. There's no way we can understand this right now and what the ramifications are. And I introduce you to the genre of science fiction for all the things that can go right, wrong, or inexplicable.
Yeah, so there probably will be many more conversations around this between us in the future. So just in summary, we talked about some use cases for ChatGPT. I'm glad Matt brought up the narrow and general intelligence. In both the financial planning and asset management world, obviously ChatGPT and AI is certainly, there's tons of operational efficiencies that people will get, but there's still going to be the issue of trust, behavior, the general things and the specific things too, that as investors and clients, there's needs that AI is most likely not going to be able to replace, or not anytime in the near future. And yeah, just the sort of the vastness of it, how you guys bookended it, I think is going to be interesting to see over the years how this develops. So we'll keep this topic on our radar. We hope you guys found this interesting and insightful, and we will see you next time. Thank you. Hi guys, this is Justin again. Thanks so much for tuning into this episode. You can follow Jack on Twitter at @PracticalQuant. You can follow me on Twitter at JJCarbonneau, and follow Matt on Twitter at @CultishCreative. If you found this discussion interesting and valuable, please subscribe in either iTunes or on YouTube, or leave a review or a comment. Also, if you have any ideas for topics you'd like us to cover in the future, please email us at excessreturnspod@gmail.com. We would like this to be a listener-driven podcast and would appreciate any suggestions. Thank you.